Great. So you already mentioned Bitcoin, and we want to talk about Bitcoin and crypto. I still see your laser eyes on your Twitter profile picture, so I want to know more about that. But I also want to have your long-term view about our current monetary order or monetary disorder. Is that what we might have had in the past 50 years? So as I just said, we had the Richard Nixon closing the gold window August 15th, 1971, and that was basically the end of the Bretton Woods Agreement. And since then, we've had this inconvertible paper currency system. And my first question is, how do you think this system or non-system has fared in this half century? Is it better than we had before?
Yeah, so for those of us that are under the age of 50 and may not remember what happened after World War II, and they had an agreement called Bretton Woods, was that if you had a dollar, you could take it to the Federal Reserve window, literally a window, and they would give you, or if you had $35, and they'd give you an ounce of gold, that your dollar was always convertible to gold at $35 an ounce. What the government decided in 1971 was to suspend converting the dollar into gold. So before that, before 71, the dollar was backed by something. 35 of them would give you an ounce of gold. Since 1971, the dollar's been backed by nothing. It's a fiat currency. Or, some people try and reach and say it's backed by the military might of the United States government or something along those lines. What's been the history in the last 50 years of it? Well, for the first 20 years of it, it wasn't very good. From 1971 till the late 80s, most financial assets underperformed the inflation rate, which went up. And we paid a big price. I know it's hard to remember that in 2021. But if you were an investor in the 70s and 80s, and even into the early 80s, in mid 80s, in terms of financial assets, you didn't do particularly well in the first 15 or 20 years after that closing the gold window. Then from the mid 80s to around 2007, there was a lot of discipline on the central banks and around the governments. They did try and rein in their budget deficits. They did try and run responsible central bank policy. The Fed would often raise rates, and especially under Greenspan, he got criticized for keeping rates too high for too long. We actually ran a budget surplus. We did in the late 90s, and we tried.
That was the Clinton year, isn't it?
Yes, that was during the late end of the Clinton administration. And even when we were running deficits, it was the number one writing principle that we had in terms of investing or in terms of setting budgets was to keep the budget deficit as low as possible. All of that frayed during the financial crisis, 2008. And now we've started to learn about money printing and huge deficits, and MMT may be arguing that deficits don't apply. And we've seen this massive run up in a lot of this excess liquidity, which has created an inflation in financial assets. That's where the inflation has really come. It's been in financial assets, which led to people complaining about inequality. You're printing money and you're making rich people rich, but you're not helping the bottom 40% of the country. That changed with the pandemic and the mailing of money. And now I think we're starting to see, the inflation rate. So that's the quick history of what we have. Every 40-ish years or so, whatever monetary regime we're operating under seems to have a shelf life of around 40-ish years, some longer, some less. We're 50 years right now. And I think that this monetary regime is pretty much run its lifespan. First 20 years wasn't good. Then they had the discipline in the middle. They've kind of lost the discipline over the last 10 or 12 years. And the rise of the next monetary system is coinciding right with the loss of discipline, cryptocurrencies. The first Bitcoin transaction was made January 3rd, 2009. It was made 90 days before the Fed announced QE, which was in March 18th of 2009 is when they formally announced QE, although they did start some earlier versions of money printing in Thanksgiving of 2008. But right in there is when we created the cryptocurrency. And the whole idea that Bitcoin is a hard cap at 21 million, and that it is immutable, and it is the next, it is the next monetary regime. And then if you want to go with decentralized finance, that's the next financial system as well too. I've been a big believer that that's where we're going, that the next reserve currency will be a digital cryptocurrency. Now, you could argue whether it's going to be Ethereum or Bitcoin or a stable coin or something else or all of the above. Yeah, we can have that argument, but it ain't going to be the yuan. It isn't going to be the euro. It isn't going to be, some other fiat currency. That era is over. We're going to run out the clock here on the dollar, and we're going to go there. I think so. Really, what we've done with Bretton Woods is we've kind of run the course, and we're starting to see the next environment. And the problem with this argument is, with all speculation in the world, or with all new ideas in the world, you have two things that are going on. You have the inventors, whether it's some kind of technology, that are building something bigger. The Jeff Bezoses of the world are thinking about how they're going to deliver everything from an online purchase to everybody. And then you got the speculators that treat it like a giant casino and watch their stock prices or their cryptocurrencies fly all over the place. And everybody gets mesmerized by the casino and says, well, this isn't real. It's just all casino money, magic money going up and down. But if you want to forget the casino, that's why I got laser eyes on my Twitter feed, because I believe the cryptocurrencies are going to be the next future. But what I have never done, and what I will never do, is pump a coin. You got to buy X coin because it's going to the moon. Or you got to buy this coin because it's going to the moon. I won't even tell you to buy Bitcoin or Ethereum. What I will tell you is that what we're creating is the new financial system. What we're creating is the new reserve currency. Now, it might still be several years away from taking over, but that's the direction we're going. Understand it, watch it unfold. In the meantime, a bunch of casino operators are going to take these coins and watch them soar and crash and soar and crash. But I do think in general, their basic trend will be higher with all of that noise. And I know everybody, all the criticism you see of decentralized finance and Bitcoin always comes down to the same thing. It's all the volatility because of the casino aspect of it. They can't get past it and say, yeah, I understand. Well, we did the same thing with tech stocks in the 90s. And we saw them soar and crash and soar and crash. But then there were people underneath that were building tremendous technologies. Facebook, Google, Amazon, Microsoft was coming in with cloud services as well too. And they were producing, and they weren't that worked up about whether or not their stock doubled this week or went down 30% next week. They were building these great technologies. I think the same thing is happening in the crypto universe as well too. And if everybody wants to get focused on whether Dogecoin is going to go to $1 or not, or whether or not SafeMoon is going to crash, or some other meme coin is going to do this, or do Shiba Inu or something is going to do this or do that, they're going to miss the bigger picture here. And that's what I've been trying to focus on with the bigger picture. So Bretton Woods has run its course. We are now in, I think, creating the next financial system, the next reserve currency. And that's coming. And the last thought I would give you on it is, the other thing you hear a lot of people say is they will never allow this. They being governments and regulators. There's a Stockholm syndrome. Stockholm syndrome is where if you're a captive, if you're a hostage, you eventually take pity on your captives, or you start to believe what your captors believe as well too. And so I hear people smugly say, you're going to be wrong on these cryptocurrencies because the Fed will shut this down. And I'm like, because that's what you want. You think that the current financial system is totally fair, totally honest, is the best system we've ever had. And you hope that any potential innovation is crushed in the cradle. That's what you want. Your Stockholm syndrome is what you're seeing. I agree, they're going to try and crush it. And I agree, it will be messy in the process. But I also don't think they're going to succeed in the long run in being able to stop this movement as well too. So that's kind of my short take on where we are with what was Bretton Woods and where we're going next as well too. Like I said, I think the history books are going to look at January 3rd, 2009 and go, right when Bernanke was cranking up the printing presses And they were awarding him Time Magazine Man of the Year for bailing out all the rich people by printing the printing presses. Was the first Bitcoin transaction. That it came so perfectly timed for what he was doing, how he was viewed, Time Magazine Man of the Year for making rich people stay rich, and what Bitcoin was creating at exactly the same moment, and what it's become in the last 12 years, and what it will become, and all the cryptos will become in the next 12 years as well too.